You don't belong here, Dad. Leave before people start staring. Those were the first words my son, Ethan, spoke to me as I stood outside the church where my ex-wife's funeral was being held. His voice was cold, steady, like I was some stranger trying to sneak into a private service. For a moment, I thought he was joking, but then I saw his eyes, sharp, full of bitterness, just like his mother's. The small-town air smelled of rain and roses, the kind florists pack into wreaths for mourners. I had driven 5 hours that morning to be here, dressed in my one good suit, tie knotted tight around my throat, palms sweating on the steering wheel. I wasn't here to cause trouble. I just wanted to say goodbye to the woman I had once loved, and to the years we had spent raising Ethan together before she poisoned him against me. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. My name is Thomas Blake. I'm 56 years old. I spent most of my life working double shifts as a mechanic in a small garage in Dayton, Ohio. My knuckles are still stained with grease no matter how much soap I use. I sacrificed everything so my son could go to college, so his mother could keep the house after the divorce, so they'd never know what it was like to live hungry the way I did as a kid. And now, at the very end, when I thought maybe death would soften old grudges, my own boy was telling me to turn around. I remember looking past him, through the church doors. Inside, I could hear the soft hum of the organ warming up, the shuffle of black shoes on the polished wooden floor. Her family, people who had always despised me, sat in the front pews. They used to whisper about how I wasn't good enough for their daughter, how I dragged her down. I guess, in their eyes, I was still the outsider. Ethan's hand tightened on my arm. "Dad, please, don't make a scene." I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw, but my voice came out calm. "I'm not here to fight, son. I just want to pay my respects." He shook his head, jaw set. "Mom wouldn't have wanted you here." Those words cut deeper than anything else, because once upon a time she had wanted me more than anyone. She had chosen me when I was 21 and broke, when I had nothing but a beat-up truck and a stubborn dream. And now, even in death, she was still being used as a weapon against me. I turned away, stepping back into the drizzle that had started falling on the church steps. People were watching. I could feel their stares, heavy and judging, as if I had come uninvited to a party that was never meant for me. But here's the thing Ethan didn't know. What nobody there knew. My ex-wife had kept secrets. And one of those secrets was about to change everything my son thought he knew about me. And about her. Because just 2 weeks earlier, a lawyer had called me. A lawyer who held a copy of her will. And in that will, my name was written where Ethan least expected it. The usher finally let me slip into a pew along the back wall, beneath a stained glass window of a lamb that looked half asleep. The organ settled into a hymn. People dabbed their eyes. Black umbrellas leaned like spears against the aisle. I kept my head down, hands folded, trying not to make the woman in front of me feel my breath on her neck. From the front row, my ex-mother-in-law, Darlene, kept turning, checking that I was where I belonged, like a bouncer scanning a crowd. Pastor Collins spoke about forgiveness in that gentle Sunday voice, but I heard the edge under it. "We remember Laura for the way she never gave up," he said, and his gaze landed quick as a nail on me, no matter the burden she carried. Heads tilted, a few whispers. My name wasn't said, but it hung there anyway. When the hymn ended, Ethan stood to read. He looked sharp in a navy suit, the kind we could never afford when he was little. His tie was knotted perfectly. His knuckles were white on the paper. "My mom did everything for me," he began, voice steady. "She was my mom and my dad." The words smacked like a palm to the face. He didn't look toward the back. He didn't have to. "She fought for our home when others walked away." Another clean hit. A titter ran through the pews, quick and mean as a paper cut. I swallowed. Let it sit. Let it sting. When it was over, the awkward shuffle began. Styrofoam cups and church coffee that tasted like pennies. Saran-wrapped ham sandwiches and funeral potatoes someone's aunt had made. I stood near the door to the fellowship hall, figuring I'd slip out after a plate, after one last look at the photo board where Ethan had pasted memories I'd paid for, but wasn't in. "Tom." Craig's voice came before his shoulder. My former brother-in-law, square head, tie patterned like casino carpet, stepped into my space. "You have nerve showing up," I met his eyes. "Just here to pay respects. Is that what you call it?" He smiled without warmth. "Because I call it fishing. Heard there's a will. You sniffing around for scraps?" I forced a tight smile. "I'm not here for money." "Sure you're not." He clapped my shoulder, like he was patting down a suspect. "You walked out and left her to handle the mortgage while you hid at that grease pit." "I didn't walk out." My voice came out low, even. I could smell church basement cleaner, a lemony sting. "And I didn't hide." "You weren't there," he said, and turned so that Darlene, hovering behind him with a paper plate, could nod along. "Now, be decent and go." He leaned in. "Don't make Ethan do it again." Darlene set the plate down, eyes shining with tears that could have been real or could have been the best show in town. Laura deserved better. "She said. That's all." "She did," I said, because it was true. Or at least once it had been. And I tried to be it. They didn't want the specifics. They didn't want the ledger of hours I'd worked at the shop in Dayton, the cash envelopes I slipped under Laura's doormat during that first winter after the divorce, when the furnace ate the electric bill, the way I refinanced my truck with Miami Valley Credit Union just to cover Ethan's books his freshman year at Ohio State, because the 529 plan we'd promised each other never made it past promise. They wanted a simple poster to tape over a complicated wall. So I let it be. I edged away from the table and found the photo board. Ethan at 7, in a Little League uniform, chin lifted, eyes blazing. Ethan at 12, at Hocking Hills, halfway, up an oak he wasn't allowed to climb. Ethan at 18, in his red gown, tassel crooked, mouth open mid-laugh. Laura smiled in every shot like she'd built the sun herself. I was in none of them. My absence was a careful crop line, clean as a new blade. "Dad." His voice again, behind me. I turned. Up close, Ethan looked bone-tired, like grief had weighted his eyelids. "Why are you still here?" "Because I loved your mother," I said. "Because I love you." He exhaled through his nose. "You don't get to say that today." "I do," I said. "I'm your father." "Then act like it," he shot back. "Respect my mom." "What do you think I'm doing?" The calm kept surprising me. Years ago, I would have barked, stormed, out, driven too fast down I-70 until the wind quieted my head. But 56 is too old for bolting. "Ethan, I know things you don't. Not because I wanted to keep secrets, because your mom did." "Don't," he said. A warning. "Don't you dare. I'm not going to fight you." I stepped aside so a pair of church ladies with a casserole could pass. But you should know there's going to be a reading." "A reading?" He frowned. "What are you talking about?" Before I could answer, a voice cut through the hum. "Thomas Blake?" Everyone's head turned toward the doorway. A man in a gray suit, rain still sparkling on his shoulders, held a manila envelope. He looked like he'd run a block in dress shoes. "Mr. Blake?" I raised a hand. "That's me." He threaded through the crowd, careful not to bump the sandwich trays. "I'm David Sloan from Albright and Sloan." He offered his card, the cardstock thick as a quarter. "I've been trying to reach you. My apologies for the intrusion. Ms. Laura Wren named you as an interested party to her last will and testament. The family requested the reading today, 4 o'clock. Our office, on East Main." He glanced at Ethan, then back at me. "You're required to attend." Silence bunched up in the room like a held breath. Darlene made a sound, a wet little gasp. Craig's jaw flexed like he'd swallowed a nail. Pastor Collins did a slow blink. Ethan looked at the envelope, then at me. His face, for one, unguarded. Second, showed something softer. Confusion, maybe. Then the wall went back up. "This some trick?" he asked. "It's no trick," Sloan said. "Ms. Wren's instructions were explicit." He held out a second envelope. "These are copies of the notice, one for Mr. Blake, one for the family." I took mine. The paper felt heavy, official. My name was typed cleanly on the front, like I belonged on a list after all. 4 o'clock, Sloan repeated, lowering his voice. "We'll need identification." "I'll be there," I said. "Over my dead body," Darlene hissed. "Laura wouldn't." Sloan's tone didn't change, but he cut through her words with the kind of politeness that carried a warning. "Ma'am, this is Ms. Wren's will. Whatever she wanted, whatever she set in place, we'll honor. That's how this works." Ethan's eyes found mine again. "If you show up to cause trouble, I'll show up to listen," I said. "That's all." But it wasn't all. Because I remembered the call 2 weeks earlier, the one I hadn't told anyone about, the late-night walk behind my apartment, where I'd stood under the buzzing streetlight and heard Sloan say the words, "residuary beneficiary" and "letter of intent." I remembered the bank statements in my kitchen drawer with Laura's name and mine still joined in places we thought we'd severed. There were knots. None of us had cut clean. We were all about to learn which ones she'd left tied on purpose. TE5 358. I would push through the heavy glass doors of Albright and Sloan, and every lie that had kept me out of that front pew would have to answer to paper, ink, and a dead woman's signature. What Ethan didn't know yet was that the will didn't just have my name in it. It had a map, and if I followed it, the truth would expose more than one betrayal. I sat in my truck outside Albright and Sloan's office, watching the clock on the dash crawl toward 3:58. Rain tapped on the windshield like nervous fingers, blurring the reflection of the brick building. East Main wasn't fancy, just a row of old banks and law offices with neon open signs flickering behind dusty glass. But inside that plain facade waited the turning point of my life. I lit a cigarette I didn't need, let it burn down to the filter, and crushed it in the tray. My hands weren't shaking, not anymore. The calm surprised me. Maybe I'd been preparing for this moment my whole life. Every insult, every sacrifice dismissed, every mile driven in the dark after double shifts, every envelope of cash shoved under Laura's mat. Today, her voice would echo one last time through ink and paper. At 3:59, I opened the door. The air smelled of rain on hot pavement. the kind of smell that always made me think of baseball games and county fairs. Funny how memory clings to weather. I adjusted my tie, squared my shoulders, and walked in. The office was dim, lined with mahogany shelves and photos of past partners shaking hands in front of courthouse steps. A receptionist directed me to the conference room. When I opened the EI door, I saw them. Ethan, stiff-backed in his chair, jaw set. Darlene, clutching her rosary. Craig, leaning too far back like he owned the place. Their eyes burned into me the second I entered. "You shouldn't be here," Darlene hissed. "I was summoned," I replied, and slid into the empty chair across from them. David Sloan, the lawyer, shuffled papers, adjusting his glasses. "We'll begin shortly. This will be straightforward." "Straightforward," Craig muttered. "With him here?" Laura would roll in her grave. I leaned forward, voice calm. "Craig, I'm not here to argue. I just want to hear what Laura had to say." "Don't talk about her like you cared," Ethan snapped. His voice cracked, and for the first time I heard the boy in him, the one who used to run down the bleachers after a game, arms wide for me. "I did care," I said softly. "I always cared." He looked away, jaw clenched, fingers tightening, on the chair. Sloan cleared his throat. "Let's keep this civil. Now, this is the last will and testament of Ms. Laura Wren." He unfolded the papers, the crisp sound cutting through the tension like a blade. The first minutes were routine. Small. Bequests to charities, trinkets to cousins, her jewelry to Ethan's future wife. Darlene dabbed at her eyes, nodding with approval. It all sounded neat, proper, exactly what they expected. Then Sloane's tone shifted. "As for the residuary estate, meaning the remainder of her assets, including the marital home, accounts, and insurance, Ms. Wren stated as follows." He paused, looked up at us, and read, "To my former husband, Thomas Blake, who sacrificed more than anyone ever knew, I leave joint authority with our son Ethan over all property and accounts. My wish is that they decide together how to use, keep, or sell these assets. I do this because, though our marriage ended, I never stopped knowing he was a good man, and I want our son to learn the truth of that." The room froze. Ethan's head jerked up like he'd been struck. Darlene let out a sharp gasp, her rosary slipping from her fingers onto the table. Craig muttered something under his breath I couldn't quite catch, but it sounded a lot like "unbelievable." I sat still, letting the words sink in, my face calm, while my heart pounded against my ribs. "That can't be right." Darlene snapped. "You must have misread it." Sloan adjusted his glasses again. "I assure you, Mrs. Wren, I read it correctly. The documents are notarized, signed, and legally binding." "She hated him," Darlene barked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She told us. She said he abandoned her." Sloan shook his head. "Whatever she told you, ma'am, this is what she wrote. This is her will." Ethan's face went pale, then red. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered. She wouldn't." "Ethan," I said gently, "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know until a few weeks ago." He turned on me, fury burning in his eyes. "Don't pretend this isn't what you wanted all along." I held his gaze, steady. "What I wanted was to be in your life. The rest, it's just paper." The room erupted after that. Darlene demanding challenges, Craig threatening lawsuits, Ethan caught between grief and rage. Sloan sat firm, his voice calm but unyielding. "Unless successfully contested in probate court, these are Ms. Wren's final wishes. You can dislike them, but you cannot ignore them. I sat back in my chair, watching the storm swirl around me. For years, they painted me as the villain, the coward, the man who walked away. But Laura's words, her last words, were now carved into legal stone. And that was only the first reveal. Because inside the envelope Sloane had handed me at the church was something more. A sealed letter, addressed only to me. And when I opened it later that night, alone in my truck, I would discover a secret Laura had kept hidden even from Ethan. A secret that could shatter everything. The office parking lot was nearly empty by the time I tore the seal on the envelope Sloane had handed me. The last streaks of daylight bled orange against the wet pavement. My hands were steady now, steadier than they had any right to be. As I unfolded Laura's handwriting, it wasn't typed, not notarized, just ink on paper. And yet, it weighed more than anything Sloane had read aloud. Tom, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I know what they think of you. Maybe even what Ethan thinks. But I couldn't leave without telling you the truth. You paid for more than just Ethan's books. You paid the mortgage more times than I admitted. And when I told people you walked out, it wasn't you. It was me. I was scared, proud, and I let that pride turn into poison. I don't expect forgiveness. But I do expect you to show Ethan the receipts I left in the safety deposit box. He deserves the truth. And you deserve peace. I sat there in the cab of my old Ford, rain tapping the roof like a metronome. I remembered every night I worked overtime at the garage, grease thick in my nails, and then slid an envelope of cash beneath her door without signing my name. She had kept the proof, and she wanted Ethan to see it. The next morning, the storm came to my apartment before I could even plan. A hard knock rattled the door. I opened it to find Ethan, drenched from the rain, his fists balled at his sides. You tricked her, he spat. You manipulated her into putting you in the will. I shook my head slowly. Ethan, listen to me. No! His voice cracked, raw with grief and fury. She told me my whole life you were gone, that you didn't care. Now I'm supposed to believe this fairy tale? That you're some secret hero? I stepped aside. Come in. There's something you need to see. He hesitated, but curiosity tugged him inside. The apartment smelled of motor oil and black coffee. My life boiled down to two things. I opened the drawer of my desk and pulled out the smaller envelope from Sloane's packet. Inside were the deposit box keys and a slip with the location. What's that? Ethan demanded. Your mother left me this, I said. She wants you to know the truth, he scoffed. The truth? Or whatever story you're spinning? Tomorrow, I said, holding his gaze. Come with me to the bank. If I'm lying, you'll see it yourself. But if I'm not, then you'll finally know what I've carried all these years. He glared at me, jaw working like he wanted to spit another insult. But then he snatched the keys from my hand. Fine. Tomorrow. The next day, we drove together in silence to First Federal Bank. The vault smelled of dust and iron, the kind of smell that clings to secrets. The teller slid open the long drawer of the safety deposit box and placed it on the table. My heart hammered, but my hands didn't tremble. Ethan pulled out the first stack of envelopes, each marked with dates, years back. Inside, deposit slips and receipts, cashier's checks, every one written from my account to hers, every one signed. He flipped through them faster, eyes widening, his breath coming short. This can't be real. It's real, I said quietly. Every time you had a new pair of cleats, a working furnace, college tuition, it came from me. Even after she told you I was gone. Even after she cut me out of your life." Ethan's shoulders slumped, like the weight of the womb. Years had just landed on him at once. She lied to me. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away, his face crumpling. "Why didn't you fight harder? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought, if she needed to paint me as the villain to keep you safe, I could live with that," I said. "I didn't want you caught in the crossfire. I thought, one day you'd figure it out yourself." His eyes glistened, and he shoved the papers back into the box. "Craig and Grandma can't see this," he muttered. "They'll twist it. They'll say it's fake." "They'll see it," I said, "because your mother wanted them to." That night, Sloan arranged for the family to gather again at the church hall. He spread the documents across the long folding table, every receipt lined up like a soldier. Craig's smirk faltered the second he saw the amounts. Darlene's lips pressed thin, her eyes darting for a new excuse. "This doesn't prove anything," she snapped. "It proves enough," Sloan said. "It proves Laura knew the truth, and she wanted it known." The hall was silent, the sound of rain against the windows the only witness. Ethan stood, his voice unsteady but louder than before. "My dad was there," he said. "You all lied to me. Mom lied. And I don't know why she did. But I'm done believing you over him." Craig slammed his palm on the table. "Don't be a fool, Ethan. He'll ruin you the way he ruined her." I leaned forward, calm, almost whispering. "The difference is, Craig, I built, I paid, I worked. What did you ever do but take?" The room shifted. The first crack in their armor had appeared, and soon the whole wall would crumble. Because Laura's will wasn't just about money. It was about exposing who had really been bleeding her dry all those years. And Craig was about to learn that poetic justice always comes with interest. The following Sunday, the church hall filled again, not for a funeral this time, but for the formal announcement of probate proceedings. Word had spread fast in our small Ohio town. Gossip runs quicker than fire here, and everyone wanted to see the drama play out. The hall smelled of old hymnals and lemon polish. Folding chairs scraped against the floor as neighbors filed in. Darlene sat in the front, her rosary wrapped so tightly around her fingers it looked like it might snap. Craig, beside her, whispered furiously in her ear, his face redder than the Ohio State sweatshirt he usually wore on game days. Ethan sat beside me for the first time in years, arms folded, but he didn't move his chair away. That was something. David Sloan stood at the podium, papers in neat stacks. "We are here today to acknowledge the probate of Ms. Laura Wren's estate and to recognize the joint authority she granted to Mr. Thomas Blake and Mr. Ethan Wren. Before we continue, it is Ms. Wren's express wish that certain supporting documents be entered into record. The bank receipts, the envelopes, every sacrifice I'd made in the shadows." Sloan laid them out, on the long table at the front, one by one, under the buzzing fluorescent lights. The crowd leaned forward, murmurs rippling through the pews. "This is outrageous," Darlene burst out, standing. "He forged those. I don't care what you say." Craig leapt up, fingers stabbing the air toward me. "He manipulated her. He always was a con man. Laura told us she struggled, and now suddenly he's the savior. Don't insult us." The crowd turned, hungry for a showdown. My voice cut through, the noise, calm but sharp. "Craig," I said, "you've spent years leeching off Laura, borrowing money you never paid back. fixing your credit with her signature. You want the receipts? They're right there. Gasps rustled across the room. A neighbor, old Mrs. Hardy, raised her hand from the back. I remember Laura saying she had to co-sign for someone's truck loan. Was that you, Craig? Craig's face went white. That's none of your business. It is now, Sloane said firmly. He held up a notarized document. Ms. Wren kept meticulous records, including these: every loan, every check, every dollar. Craig Wren took from her over the last 20 years. She wanted her family to know the truth. The room buzzed like a hornet's nest. Darlene clutched her chest. You're lying, she whispered. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Ethan stood, his voice breaking but strong. All this time, I thought my dad abandoned us, that he left Mom to fight alone. But it was you, Uncle Craig. You bled her dry. And Grandma, you let him. The weight of those words silenced the hall. Craig opened his mouth, then shut it, sweat glistening on his forehead. Sloane closed the folder with a snap. The court will honor Ms. Wren's wishes. Joint authority remains between Mr. Blake and his son. Any challenge can be filed. But with these documents, I doubt it will succeed. I looked around the room, the same people who once whispered that I wasn't good enough, that I was the villain. Now their eyes avoided mine, shame flickering in their faces. That was enough. Afterward, Ethan walked with me out into the cool evening. The rain had stopped, and the sunset broke through the clouds, painting the sky with fire. He shoved his hands in his pockets. Dad, he said quietly, I don't know how to undo 20 years of thinking you were the bad guy. I swallowed, my throat tight. You don't have to. Just give me today, and maybe tomorrow. We'll go from there. He nodded slowly, and for the first time in years, he didn't look at me with anger. He looked at me like a son searching for his father. Behind us, Craig stormed off toward his car, shouting into his phone. Darlene trailed behind, shoulders slumped, the rosary limp in her hand. Their reign of lies had ended, not with fists or shouting, but with paper, ink, and truth. Poetic justice doesn't come fast, but when it arrives, it strips the villains of their masks and leaves them naked in the light. Laura's final act was not just to divide her estate. It was to restore my dignity, to give Ethan the truth, and to make sure those who had stolen from her would be remembered for what they truly were. I stood taller as the sky darkened. For the first time in decades, I felt peace. And to you listening, tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.